Hello everybody and welcome. Hope you're doing well. I am trying to run a quick update on my Vcarve software. Thought I would be done way before we started class, so I might have to use another version of Vcarve while that one's installing, and then we'll switch over to it. Tonight we're going to do a Q&A. Man, I'm having a hard time really coming up with ideas for classes and stuff. What I'm going to have you guys do is I'm going to put my, let's see here. Let me see if I can create this real quick. Put my email address in the chat area. laney.shaughnessy@spindletv.com. There's my email address. You can either put it in this chat window or email me topics that you guys and girls would like to see covered in class, different things and all. I rack my brain for hours, trying to figure out something to come up with and all. I'm going to this is going to be a little bit of a basic night tonight for some of you that are getting started and stuff. We're going to do a Q&A, live Q&A, so you can ask me any question, I'll answer it. But we're also going to be working with 3D models, importing third-party 3D models, how to import them, how to orientate them, how to size them and everything and get them into the project, and then what to do with them from there, how to combine models, if we can combine models, and creating toolpaths and stuff like that for 3D models. But we're going to do that, and that's going to there's still a lot of people that have really not ventured a whole lot into 3D modeling, and there's some of you that are just masters at it, right? So we're going to be, just kind of covering the models, our combine modes, add, subtract, merge. We're going to look at tilting and fading on models and things and all that tonight, while in the process of kind of going through a Q&A. So we're going to start off real quick with a question that Kevin Wilkinson asked on how to taper a board. The molding toolpath would probably be the quickest and easiest way to do that, and I'll show you here in just a second. As soon as my Vcarve starts up, it is surprisingly my computer. I think my computer is giving me some kind of signal that it needs help somewhere. I can't figure out where it needs help, but sometimes it struggles a little bit on certain tasks lately, and I don't know what it is. Let me see here. Let's go into we'll start off with this. Come in here, and I'll switch over to our screen in just a moment. Hello from Australia. All right, Kevin, I believe you asked, an example you gave was running a one and a half inch board down to the size of a half inch, right? Or let's see, say from an inch and a half tapered down to a half inch, right? Over a 14-inch long board. All right, so let's go 14 inches here. We'll go just 7 1/4 on the width, and let's get switched over so you can see the screen. And let's get me down in the bottom left corner. And let's get this microphone up out of the way there. Okay, so we'll go 1.5, and click OK on our job setup. All right, now first thing that we're going to do is we're going to kind of create the taper, right? So let's go with a 1.5 inch board here, and as an example from a side view, right? We're looking at the side view and everything, and let's get this Vcarve out of the way. Bear with me a second here. Stand by. Okay. All right, so let's say that on this 1.5 inch board here, we are going to taper it down, 1 inch on one end, right? Okay, so we are tapering down from 1.5 inches down to 1/2 inch, and let's go in here and go into node editing mode again, and let's delete this bottom span. So we have this profile here, right? Now we need to sweep this profile along our material, and we can sweep it in either direction, but I do need to make it 14 inches. So I do need to size it. I want to keep the width and the height the same, but the width I do want to make 14 inches, right? And the thing that I want to do is I want to be able to, stretch this profile across this board. Now I could do it from the back or the front, it doesn't matter. I'll just draw a line over here on the right side from here to here. Space bar to finish that. And now using the molding toolpath, I will select on my profile and then select on the part here. Okay. And you can use in this case, a large diameter ball nose. It doesn't have to be anything real small because you're just tapering, you're kind of just tapering that material. So I'll use, I've got a 1/4 inch ball nose. I'll use that, and that'll be fine. Let's see, I could use a clearance tool if I want to clear out some of that meat material so the ball nose isn't removing all that material. And for that, I'll use a, I'll just go with a 1/4 inch end mill. I have a larger end mill. I could use a 1/2 inch and all, but 1/4's fine. And we'll go ahead and calculate that toolpath. And so if we tilt this over here, our clearing toolpath, the rough cut, is going to go through and mill away that level of material all the way down, creating kind of the stair steps of the rough cut. And bringing it essentially down, so the ball nose bit, all it has to do is just kind of smooth everything out for the taper, right? So let that finish up there, and then I'll turn the quality down so it's a little bit faster, so we don't have to sit there and watch this toolpath run. All right, so once we have kind of that rough cut, that stair step and everything, let me go into the toolpath simulation quality and turn that down a bit. then, you know, after the rough cut, and again, of course, when I changed the quality, it had to redo it again. Here, let's stop that. Let's turn off this animation. There you go. It'll be a little bit faster that way. So it'll go through and stair step it down, and then the finished cut will go in and smooth it to create that taper, right? So that's the way that I would taper a 1.5 inch board down to a 1/2 inch over a span of 14 inches. Hopefully that helped you some, right? That's how I would do it. So draw your line. That's the drive rail. Draw your profile to scale, 14 inches long, 1/2 inch on one end, 1.5 on the other. Use your profile toolpath to sweep that across and create your toolpath. And you can use larger bits or whatever, you know, because you're just doing a flat area. But that's how you would taper. Okay, so let's see here. Sylvia, is it possible to fix rough edges on a 3D that I import? No. Honestly, it's really not. You can do smoothing, but that's just going to smooth out the entire model, not just the edges. The quality of a model is really going to depend on the modeler, you know, where you buy these model from. If it's a high quality model or a low resolution model and stuff. And if it comes in and it has rough edges around the edge, they just, you know, they didn't take time in kind of cleaning it up. Really, the only thing that you're going to be able to do, Sylvia, is, you know, do a profile cut, you know, to cut that part out. If you're cutting out this model, I'm not sure what you're doing. If you're doing kind of a plaque with the model raised and you have rough edges, unfortunately, I mean, it's just, it is what it is. If you have a spire, you could go into the Aspire tools, which would be in the modeling tab, and the sculpting tool, and you can try to smooth out those edges yourself and everything. But if the poly count is real low, then it's just it's not gonna come out very well. You just want to buy better quality models, right? From, you know, find a better source. If you get models from this one source or whatever, and they're always rough edges and things like that, then find a better source. You know, there's better modelers out there. There's thousands and thousands of them out there and stuff. Or reach out to the modeler and say, hey, I bought this. The edges are rough as shit. Fix them, right? I paid for it. Fix it. They should, if they guarantee their product. Let's see here. Be sure if you have questions for me to, hey, Dave Gatton, how you doing, bud? If you have questions for me, throw a question mark in front of your question so I know what it is. Tom asks, doing the offset toolpath, cannot always get it to travel from inside to the outside in one pass. Is there a way to force the toolpath to only have one start and end point? Doing the offset toolpath, Tom, I've never heard of the offset toolpath. So, can you be a little bit more specific on what toolpath you're referring to? I know you can do offsets, allowance offsets in a toolpath, but what toolpath are you referring to, Tom Savendel? Because the offset toolpath is not a thing. Let me know. Yes, for 3D finishing. Okay, there we go. So, all right. So on 3D finishing, the boundary offset is probably what you're referring to. The offset boundary. So let's go back, and now that we know that we're so doing the 3D offset in a toolpath, I cannot always get it to travel from inside to outside in one pass. Is there a way to force the toolpath to always have one start and end point? On a 3D model, let's say, for example, I'm just going to kind of create one here real quick. All right, so let's say I have this dish here and everything, and I'm creating a 3D finishing toolpath on this, and I want the bit to be permitted to go beyond the line. So that's the only reason you would use an offset, Tom. Oh, you're talking about the offset, not an offset. You're talking about an offset. Okay, so the offset goes round and round and round, and it works its way out. It works its way out from a point. It works its way out to the outside of the model. So it's in a finishing cut will work its way. It cuts to the deepest depth. It's its deepest depth of that model at that particular point, and works its way out. So if I were offset cutting this and calculating this toolpath here, it's going to, let's go in, really zoom into this. It's going to do circles, complete circles, and then move over. Complete circle, then move over. Complete circle, then move over. Complete circle, then move over. And it's gonna repeat that all the way around. And there's only one start and end point on that circle that it's making. Then it moves over. Then it steps over. Whatever the step over is for the bit, it's gonna step over, and everything. So once it finishes winding its way out, stepping over, winding, stepping over, winding, you know, it's going to go out to that finished model. And so the only thing that I, you know, can say is your question. I mean, it has it comes in circles and offsets, so it doesn't go from inside to outside in one pass period. So bear with me. Let me read the second part of your question. It says, this is for frames I do on 3D models. Sometimes it calculates by doing half the center, then the other half. Other times it will do it all in one flow. Well, it kind of just depends on the position of the model and where it's carving, because it's going to carve into a position where it can, and if the model has some kind of step down or over, what have you, it's going to go to this point, and then it's going to kind of continue over here until it catches this up with this, and then it will finish them both up together and stuff. If the model's consistent like this little dish I made, it's going to be just consistent. But if the model's kind of offset and everything, it's going to do one section, then it's going to come over and do another section and get that section caught up to the first one. And then once they're all caught up, if there's a third one, it'll do that too. And then it'll come back and finish everything up so it's all consistent. There's no way of changing that. Okay? So there's no way of changing that. It's just the way the software tries to streamline the toolpath. In that finish cut, there is, you know, there's no advanced options. I don't know what this is popping up here. Stand by. There's no advanced options that will allow you to change its machining strategy on that, the way it looks at it and stuff. Okay. All right, let's see here. I saw something. Good evening, 50 degrees. Baron says, importing SVGs, that's when you open them. They only show up in your browser, not in your program. Well, SVGs, I don't know if I have, let me see if I have any SVGs. I do. I just created a couple the other night. Okay, SVGs. So SVGs here, Baron, as far as what you're saying they only show up in your browser, not in your program. When you are, if you see them in your browser here, like here's my browser and stuff, if I try to open this up, it's going to want to pick a program to open with it. In this case, I'm with Vectric, but if I were to import that SVG file, it's a big file, I'll give it a second. It's going to bring in those vectors, right? And this is that 5-year remake of that 5-year Valentine's sign that you guys got and everything. Those files, by the way, from last week's class are available for download in the video description. But an SVG, scalable vector graphic, you can only view it in an SVG viewer. I can view this in this, but I can also view it in my program that I have, which is a viewer. It's a DXF viewer. I don't know if the SVGs will show up in it, but we'll find out. It's called JetCam. And we'll let JetCam open here and I'll show you that. And so in JetCam, this CAD viewer, it should show up because it's a CAD program. It's a SVG, a scalable vector graphic. If I go to, give it a chance to get caught up here. Come on, JetCam. This is what I'm talking about. My computer's struggling a little bit on certain programs. I think it's telling me that it's got some kind of issue that I got to dig into. Take it back over to the computer guys or something. Say, hey, what's going on with this? All right, JetCam. But JetCam 3D Viewer is just a program that you can download and install. Let me see if I can get this. See if I can open that back up. Let's see if I can get it to respond. Nope. My computer, God help me if my computer dies, I'll be mad. That's why I have 6 hard drives right now. Everything is backed up on different hard drives. All right. So if I go into my downloads and I go into the Valentine projects that I were just in. Give it a second. There's a lot of files there. Come on, downloads. It's trying to pull every one of my DXFs. That's the one thing about this viewer. It tries to grab all of your CAM files and organize them in a folder down here at the bottom. So give me just a moment. It's going to take a second. Currently, right now, these are all DXF files. Okay, so let's go down to Valentine's projects. A, B, C, D, E, F, G, S, T, U, V. That's the zip file. Let's go here. S, T, U, V. And then in the Valentine's projects, give it a second to pull up. Okay, so that's the DXF. All these are the DXF, so it's not even showing the SVGs, right? So it's only gonna the jet cam's only gonna show the DXF files. So it doesn't even actually pull in the SVGs, so the scalable vector graphics. So you're not, when you're looking in a browser, and hell, I don't even know if this was even a question, Baron. I thought you might have just been making a damn statement. But all you're going to see is the little icon of whatever program you use to open SVGs. You're not going to see anything other than that. When you open it up in your program, that's when you'll see the file. If you want to preview it or something, you know, hopefully the person gave you a preview image of that you can open up and look at it, you know, if you purchased it, right? So because you're not going to be able to see what the actual image is unless you import it into your Vectric software. Okay, cool beans. All right, now let's go ahead and close out of this. Let's get rid of all that. All right, let's see here. Yeah, it's going to show now, depending on, see, showing up as a Chrome HTML document is because that's you know, your Chrome is what's been opening vectors and stuff and things like that. Once you assign it to be open with Vcarve Pro or what have you, and that being your vector viewer, if you will, you know, your Vcarve Pro or your Spire, then you'll start seeing that icon instead of the little HTML icon. So let me give you that example here. If I'm in my web browser, okay, and let's go to that Valentine's file here. Oops, not that one. This one. All right, so I have Vcarve Pro showing up as, you know, my opener. And let me view large icons, right? So you can see this. Okay, so I've got Vcarve Pro being my opener, right? So I have that icon. But if I come over here and I change this, I change the properties of this, give it a second. Come on. My computer's gonna die. No, it's not. It did not like me right-clicking on that. Hold on a minute. Okay, I'll give that a minute to catch up. All right, while that's catching up, I'll give it a second to catch up. I want to look and see come on, you son of a gun. It should not be this difficult to open a file up, ladies and gentlemen. And whoever's texting me on my phone, I'm not available. Come on. My goodness. Okay, we'll let that catch up to itself for a minute. I want to talk about importing third-party 3D model files and regular model files here in just a minute. Once I get past this little issue with my File Explorer. I honestly don't know what's happening. Almighty. Let me see if I can turn Norton off. I'm going to disable auto protect for a moment, just in case it's my Norton causing me some issues. Wow. Okay, so in here, if I choose open with, you know, I have programs that I can choose. I'm going to choose another app to open this with, and I'll use a web browser. We'll use, you know, Google Chrome or something. Let's come down here. And what browser do I have? The only browser I have available for this type of file is Internet Explorer. So, and once I do that, it'll eventually end up changing all my icons to where those files open up with Internet Explorer, right? We can go into our default programs. So in the settings of your computer, go to your apps, go to default apps, and choose one of your Vectric programs to open up these types of files, right? It'll say file type. You can choose that, and it'll change all your icons to that instead of the HTML document, right? You could do that as well, and stuff. Let's 15 minutes is okay with that. Close out of that and let's get back to this for a minute. So basically all it is the reason why it shows the HTML document is because that's what the program that you have set to open up those types of files. Change the program in your default settings on opening files of that file type, you know, with Vcarve Pro, and then all your icons will look like the Vcarve Pro. That's all it is. It's seriously all it is. It literally, that's all it is. All right, let's see here. To get the best performance with the computer I use to run Vectric, what is the best way to configure it? Fuck if I know. Look at what I'm doing. I'm having a hard time as it is right now. No, basically you need to make sure that you of course have at least the minimum quantity specs and everything. You know, for me, you know, the software only requires a 4 gigabytes of RAM memory, right? I have 32 gigabytes of RAM memory. Still, you know, running into issues. Like I said, it's my computer health at all. But your graphics cards, this program is not it is CPU heavy. More so than graphics card heavy. It runs off the, you know, the CPU, and we're buffering right now with everything going on. Okay, so we're in a buffering state. Okay, sorry guys, my computer stand by a minute, guys. Okay. All right, guys, we are buffering a bit, and I have very little bit rate coming in right now on my computer. So bear with me a second. I don't know what's happening. I'm going to see if I can fix it. I don't know how I'm not buffering on your end, Mark, because I sure am on my end. As far as it's telling, well, YouTube is telling me that that I'm buffering, that other people are buffering and all. So, okay, well, all right. I'll just ignore what's happening on YouTube then, and we'll just go there. And it's telling me that there's absolutely no data coming through to you guys. I don't know if YouTube's lying to me or what. Evidently they're lying to me. Okay. All right. Well, we haven't skipped a beat. All right. Let's talk a little bit about, and then I'll get back to those questions. I'll keep them coming. I can scroll through it all. But let's talk a little bit about model importing and how we would combine and import models and stuff. So let's first talk about our native models, V3M files. On the V3M files, those are native files to the Vectric software. And what you would see in your clip art are typically going to be a V3M file or a 3D.clip file. Those are Vectric native files and everything. And when we import them in most cases, it's just a simple drag and drop function, right? So we're dragging and dropping it in. But if it's a third-party model file, then we have to import that and orientate that model. So a native model in our clip art, it's a drag and drop, or we can, double click on a model and it'll drop it in there. So we can either just drag it over from our clip art or we can drop it in. But when we're importing a third-party model file, and let's go into our downloads and let's go to here. And let's grab this heart here. It's a heart model that we're importing in. Now, when we import a third-party model file in, such as an STL, OBJ, .v3, or not .v3m, PRJ, many others, it's going to bring us into this import window. And what it's asking us to do is to orientate our model. Because depending on the model creator, some models may come in sideways. Some models may come in upside down. Some models may come in facing their left side, their right side, their back side, and all. So they have to be orientated appropriately. In this case, for this particular model, we want a top orientation because we want to see the top here. Okay, and then we're going to, get that model sized and to fit in our material. So, you know, we may have to, before we go into sizing, some models may be required to, you know, turn 90 degrees in one direction or the other, or, you know, um, just depending on which way you need that model to orientate. Now, when we get that model sized in, let's bring this to 7 inches and click apply. Then I'm going to center the model. Now, centering the model means that I'm centering it in my virtual material block here, this red box that you see on the screen. You might be able to see that red box on the screen. I don't know how clearly you can see it, but there is a red box there. And within that box, there is a 0 plane. And if I turn this up on its Y direction here, you should see the 0 plane, this blue line here. Okay. And my model has been centered on that. That means that, you know, if this was a two-sided model, then I want to be able to carve one half on one side, one half on the other, right? I want it centered. But in this case, this is a one-sided model, so I need it above the 0 plane. So I won't be able to get to that screen in version 11 and higher. I won't be able to get to that screen till I click on position and import, the button position and import. But in older versions of software, if you haven't moved up to 11, the position, model position in the material, the Z, plane position, the 0 plane position, it's right here on this main screen for you. And it's a little slide bar that you slide up or down, and we want to slide it to the bottom. Well, for version 11, we have to click into our next window. Now we get brought to the position window, and what we want is we have a black line here that represents our 0 plane. We want to bring that black line down, which effectively brings our model up. Okay, so it brings our model up. And we want to discard any material or anything that's below that 0 plane. Then you can, you know, import that in. You know, click import and bring that in and all. Now, we may, you know, my model, when it imported, let's turn off the other one for a minute. When the model imported, it imported with quite a bit of base meat underneath it, right? And if we have a spire, we can remove that base meat here in this level. But if we have Desktop or Pro, we need to remove that base meat in the import phase. So let's back up one step. So I'm going to delete the heart here. I'm going to import it again. I'm going to orientate it again. Give it a second to orientate in. I'm going to make sure I'm in top orientation. That's what I want. I'm going to make it my 7 inches like I did a moment ago. I'm going to center the model. And let me click apply before I do that again. There we go. I'm going to center the model. And now when I go to my import, knowing that there's a lot of base meat here, let's go back into our Y plane here. This model has a lot of base meat. And so if I slide that slide bar all the way down, I'm bringing that base meat in with it underneath. So in this case, I want to, you know, I might want to trim some of that off. So I may want the model sitting down lower here, you know, and because whatever's below that 0 plane line, it's going to get discarded, right? So it's going to get thrown, you know, removed. So I could bring that down and discard everything that's below that and import that in. And I'm still going to have some base meat, but it's not going to be as much as it was, right? You know, I do want some thickness to my model. Now, if I would have brought it straight down to that center point, then it would have cut the model off right at this upper lip right here. Let me show you that one more time quickly. Let's go into here. Bring that model in one more time. All right, I'm going to size it down to the 7 inches. Click apply. I'm going to center that model, and this time I'm going to keep it at center, which I normally wouldn't. But this model I want it to be cut off right there because it is a two-sided model. This one in particular is the heart's on the bottom side as well too. I'm going to go ahead and import, and I'm going to keep that at the middle line, and I'm going to click import, and that's going to cut the heart off and everything that's just right at that end of that shape. Now, by doing that, I did lose a little of the model right here in the tip. Let me see if I can zoom into that. I did lose a little bit of that model right there and everything, and this stitch coming in and stuff by cutting it off so short. And so I may end up taking this, re-importing it. This will be the last time I import this model. Sizing it down to my 7 inches when the orientation screen opens up. Clicking apply, centering the model, and this time when I come into the import, instead of being right at the center, I'm going to lower this down just a little bit, just to give myself that little bit of meat right there, so that when I import this in, I've got that meat back and that stitch and everything. So if we come in here and look at the bottom, I've got that meat that was removed in that bottom stitch, right? So orientating your model, generally on a two-sided model, a lot of times you're centering it, because you're going to carve one half, flip the board over, carve the other half on a two-sided model, like a chess piece or something. On a one-sided model, you want it on top of that zero plane. You want to slide that bar all the way to the bottom. In the case of this particular model, I want this to be a one-sided, even though I could make it a two-sided model. I just wanted a one-sided model, so I'm cutting off some of that meat underneath. So I'm bringing it just down below center, so it deletes everything below that, and I end up with this, just this little bit of meat underneath. Okay. And now that I have that model brought in and all, I can now work with it in my software and everything however I want. Now I have two models in this project. Let's go into a split view here. I have two models into this project, and I want the heart to go inside the middle of this other kind of cartouche, it's called. Cartouche. So I'm going to size the model down just a little bit more. And I'm going to bring that model over and drag it over to here, and then I'll size it down from here. Now, let's go ahead and get that. I'm going to select that model first, this model first, this model last, and I'm going to align it to the center, right? Get it kind of somewhat centered in there. Now, this combination, the way the models are combining on a 3D model, the way they're combining, I am either adding one model to another, or I'm subtracting one model from another, or I'm merging one model into another. And in this case, I want the heart to kind of take on the shape of what's underneath it. So that's an add mode. So an add mode is like taking well, I use this analogy all the time. Let's say we have a car and I throw a car cover over it, a sheet. That sheet is going to conform to the shape of the car underneath it. That's what happens when we add a model. So if I were to take this heart and move it over this right side of the model here, it's going to take on that shape, just like draping a sheet over the car. Okay? That's because the heart is being added to that cartouche. I'm assuming that's how you pronounce it, the cartouche. It's being added to it, so it's taking on that shape and it's kind of draping it over, right? So when I take that heart and bring it over here into the center area, that center area has a little dome, so my heart has a dome to it too. Okay? It's kind of following that dome. But if I move my heart up here, then it's going to take on that shape of the model. Okay, so that's adding. Now, if I were to subtract that model, if I come in here to the combine mode and I subtract that model, it's going to basically take that model and subtract that shape of that model from the cartouche, the model that's underneath it. And remember all that base meat we had on the heart? Well, that's this lip right here, and then it comes down to this little dish and all the shape of that heart. So if I was subtracting that model, it's removing, that material. It's subtracting it. Okay, so I'm subtracting one shape from another. It basically takes that heart and turns it inside out, and then it's removing that material from the model that's underneath it. Okay. Now, if I merge that heart into that cartouche, then if I merge it into that cartouche, then now those two models are blended together. Okay. Now, my heart, if I go into the properties of it, right now it has, that base meat, that straight meat that was underneath, it has the same amount of meat. So if I turn that cartouche off, it has the same amount of meat as that cartouche is. So when I turn that back on, just only a little bit of the heart is sticking up over that cartouche. It's blended together. Now, if I go in and give the base height, some additional height, then I'm effectively, oops, that was the cartouche. Hold on a second. Let's close that and go into here. If I give that heart some base height, I'm effectively lifting it up, right? So I could give it a little bit of base height. I could give it a lot of base height, and it's saying, hey, it's just literally sticking meat under that heart and jacking that heart, the top part of that heart up. And when you're looking at a model, your shape height is the curved part. Your base height is this straight meat. So where it starts to curve to create the shape of the heart, all of that is base height. So if I come back with 0 base height, I have no base height on this, but if I give it shape height, then I'm plumping up that shape, that heart, right? I'm kind of almost like air in a balloon. I'm giving that shape more height. And in this case, if I gave the shape this kind of height, then I would probably lower the base height a little bit to bring it down to where it was kind of flush on that edge if I was going to do that, So if I'm merging this model now, the heart and the cartouche, they are not taking, neither one of them are taking on each other's shape. They are taking their own shape and they are merging together. And we have added additional shape height so the heart stands a little bit more proud. We've reduced the base height so it kind of sits a little bit level in here, a little flush and everything. to kind of, you know, make it look a little bit more natural. Now, these are two models that normally would not go together, I don't think, but it gives you the idea. And so I'm either, again, on the combine mode, when I combine two models together, I'm either adding, where it takes on the shape, okay? I'm subtracting, where it inverts that image and removes that material from the model below it, or I'm merging the models together to blend them together. Now, those are going to be the three most common combine modes that you will use. There are two additional combine modes as well. There's low and multiply. So low is a form of merge and multiply is a form of merge. However, low is going to, instead of merging at the higher parts of the model, it's merging at the lower parts. So if I change this to low, then you're going to see the heart virtually kind of disappear. It's pretty much gone. I can go into the properties and I can give it a little bit of base height, right? But all I'm actually doing is I'm giving it base height below. What it's done is, and it's almost, it's not like, it's kind of like a subtract, if you will, but in a sense, it's flipped the model over and it's merging at the lowest point. So it's merging the top of the model with the low. And so if I come in negative here, you'll see that I'm effectively kind of removing that material so you can see the heart underneath and everything. So I've, you know, kind of taking that base height and, you know, digging it down and stuff. If I come in here at no base height, then it's almost kind of like, you know, disappeared and merged together on its low points. If I go high, then that's just going to, it's not going to do anything. Yeah, it doesn't do anything because it's on the low point. So I have to go on the subtract there. But very rarely will you use that combine mode. And then multiply, which I've never used, but multiply, it's basically taking the model on top and removing that material from the model underneath. So effectively, that heart got removed from the cartouche, and my other heart is just kind of laying inside of there, right? So it's kind of multiplied that, kept the best of both, if you will. In this case, we'll go with a merge, and we'll lower the base height down. I'll go 375 on that, or the shape height. Doesn't need to be that tall. And then I'll give the base height just a little bit of height. Not much, just to bring it up there, that kind of thing. So that's how you combine models, two models together. Now, one of the things that, let's do this in realistic terms, if we were doing, let's say, a scenery, like a log cabin type scenery and things, and I'll come back to your questions. I promise I have not forgotten your questions at all. But if we go into our clip art, and let's go to let's see here. Let's bring in these trees here and this deer. All right, let's zoom out so you can see what's happening here. Okay, let's bring that up here and let's size these trees up. And let's size this deer down. Oh, no, don't want to stretch them like that. Let's try that again. Okay. Now, when combining and everything, models, I might want this there. He's a little bit too big for the trees. Let's bring him down a little bit. Normal, either that or it's the trophy of the century. Let's go here. Okay, we'll use that as an example. Now, in this case here on the modeling, both of the items are merging together, right? Both of the items are merging together. And in this case, I don't want to do that because I have the tree growing right through, you know, the deer. I do not want the deer being added to the trees because then it'll take on the shape of the trees underneath it, right? I do not want the deer being subtracted from the trees because then, you know, it'll be sucking in, right? So the only option I do have is to merge these two, but I need the deer to be in front of the tree and you know, in front of the grass and everything. So now I have to either give it base height or I have to tilt the model or fade. So I've got those two options too, tilt and fade. We're going to talk about those right now. Now, if I'm going to go ahead and give it base height, let's turn this on its side. And let's go along the Y. Okay. Now, if I go and give my deer base height, you know, to kind of give it some extra meat underneath, then, you know, my deer is, you know, standing in front of the trees. Let's give it a little bit more base height so its legs are out of here. All right, so now I'm standing in front of the trees, right, on this deer. However, I've now increased my overall model by however much base height I gave that deer to, you know, to stand up, right? So I've got to keep that in mind because I might be trying to carve this in a 3/4 inch thick piece of material. And right now, my model as it stands, these two items here, they're about, you know, 0.4 inches thick. You know, if the more that I, you know, base and shape and things that I give my models, the more it increases that model in the material, right? And so if I had a 3/4 inch board that I was trying to carve this model in, well, I'm going to have an error, you know, because my model's too thick. And that's what we want to, you know, eliminate, you know, and not have. So I want to reset the heights here on this model. Bring that model back to the top. And I want to give it some base height, but I want to be kind of, you know, selective on how much base height I give. Okay, I'm going to go just a little bit. Now, I need the legs to be out past the grass, so I'm going to slightly tilt the model. I'm going to slightly tilt the model, or I could fade the trees, one of the two. Let's look at both. So we're going to go to a maximum 3D view for this. So if I take my selected deer here, now I've right-clicked on, or I've left-clicked on this little blue box on the bottom of the 3D view, and that opens up this properties window here. Okay, so we can work with the model in the 3D view. Now I'm going to check on the tilt box here, and then I'm going to click the set button. Now the set button, the tilt is like putting a wedge under your model. You're going to click where the front part of that wedge is going to go in, and you're going to also click where the back part of the wedge is going to be. And the first click you do is the thin part of the wedge. The second click you place is going to be the thick part of the wedge. So I need to bring his ass end up, right? So I'm going to click there second. So over here, I'll click first, and then my little anchor will get a number 2 next to it. And over here, I'll click second. And now I can change my degree of angle, and let's turn this on its side a little bit so you can see here. Now I can change my degree of angle, and I'm going to be jacking up that back end. I'll go real extreme so you can see it. You know, a 9-degree, you know, extreme. I've kind of wedged that model up, right? Well, what the goal here is to just give it enough wedge tilt so that it's out of the grass here. Okay, so we're gonna bring it up. I'll go about 1.4 inches. Oh, a little bit more. Let's go about 2.6 degrees. There we go. So I brought that end up just enough that it's standing above, and I haven't added a whole lot of meat to my model. Okay, now I also could have tried, if I didn't have the tilt on, you know, I also could have tried fading my trees to where they start to fade away. Now I got to remember though, if I fade, I lose detail. So it's going to make that model kind of disappear, right? So if I came into my trees here and I do fade, the first place I click is what I want to keep. The second place I click is what I want to fade into. So over here, I'll click up here, and then down here at the bottom, I'll click down here, and it's going to do a 50% fade automatically. Now what that's done is it's basically reduced the detail in the model down and effectively has brought, you know, my deer, if I click on the deer so it's red, it's brought it above the grass by just fading that model out a little bit down here, right? So I faded it away a little bit. But you have to understand, when you fade it away, you lose that detail, right? So, you know, by default, it does a 50% fade. If I did, let's say 100% fade, then it's going to fade that away, and I'm losing all my detail, right, in the model and everything. I want to keep, you know, respectively, I want to keep some of my detail if I'm going to fade, but I need to either do a combination of fade or tilt or whatever on the deer and all to get that deer to stand in front of the trees. Vice versa, I may need the deer to be behind the trees, right? So then I've got to, you know, completely on the deer, go back to 0 base height on him, if he'll let me, on the deer. And on the trees, I've got to give them some base height, right? Get them out in front of the deer. So I'm bringing them up and stuff. You know, however, whenever, you know, whatever makes that deer, you know, where it looks like it's behind there. But now I had to add a lot of, you know, not a lot, 0.18, you know, about 3/16 of an inch of, you know, base I had to add just to get it, that illusion that the deer is behind the tree, coming out from behind the tree, right? So I'm adding base height or shape height or what have you to get the model, or I'm tilting it or fading it to get the models to combine the way that I want them to. And I want to make sure that they're combining properly to begin with either a merge, add, or subtract, right? In this case, we merged both of them, but now one of them has to stand proud of the other. So we got to play with the base height. We got to play with the tilting and the fading until we get what we want. And if you can understand any of that to do with the models, then building any kind of scene, forestry, this, that, mountains and lakes and what have you, any kind of model combination where you need one thing to sit on top of another, you'll be able to do it all. This is the most, for me, this is the most difficult part of modeling. Combining models and everything, how they combine and getting one to look a little higher than the other and this and that. That's the most difficult part of building, you know, a nice little model collage or whatever it is you're doing. From there, it's a freaking cakewalk. You're creating a 3D rough cut, 3D finish cut toolpath, you know, doing V carving in it or whatever, you know, and projecting. This is the most difficult part. So number one, how to bring a model in. People struggle with how do I import the model. Number two, how do I combine the models, right? If you can master those two things and play around with those two things and get the understanding like, oh, I totally get this now, then there's not going to be a model project that you can't conquer or do or create and all. And desktop and pro, everything that I've just showed here, you can do. Import 3D models, combine models, merge, and all that stuff. All of that stuff can be done in all three software. The advantage I have in Aspire is I can build models, right, to any shape and everything that I want. But if I'm working with existing models that I bought on Etsy or this or that, I can only import one third-party model file per project. So you got to keep that in mind too. With Pro, I can only import one model. So that heart, I could import that, you know, if I had Pro and Desktop, but all my other models I'd have to use native model files, you know, the clip art, V3M and stuff. All right, let's go back to some questions here. And let's get back to... All right. In node editing, sometimes when I click on the node, nothing happens. If I enlarge the view and click on it, it works. Is this the way to do it, or is there a better way to node edit? So what's happening when you click on a node and nothing happens is effectively you're actually clicking on an anchor, and it's blocking the node. Let me see if I can... let me see if I can emulate that. Okay. Now, right now I have this anchor close to this node right here. Now, if I'm zoomed out and everything, and I go to, you know, click on a node, it's going to, the anchor sometimes is going to block it. Like it's just like, you know, in the NBA, you get, you know, you're going in for the dunk or the layup, and somebody just swats it out of there, right? It's blocking it. You know, sometimes it will let you click it, but you're actually clicking the anchor and not the node, right? So generally, when you're zoomed out, you know, if your mouse isn't right on the node, you know, and things, then you just have to do exactly what you said. You know, you've got to zoom in so you can see the node and click on it, right? To get that node. Because sometimes there's multiple nodes, depending on the type of vector and everything. And you've just got to get there. Now, I have a smart snapping and geometry snapping always turned on because that's going to snap my mouse much easier to the nodes and things. So that, you know, whether I'm zoomed in or out, I can still select that node. But even right there, you know, I'm on the black node right here, and it's not selecting that black node. It's only selecting the anchor that's below it. So I'm on the black node, but it's selecting the anchor that's below it. Even though my mouse is dead on, that black box is dead on right there, you know. And so being zoomed out, it's not going to work for me. Being zoomed in, it lets me click it. Right, so sometimes you got to just bring it closer. There's just no ifs, ands, or buts about it. You just got to bring it closer so that it knows what it's trying to click. Something else could be blocking it. That's pretty much it on that. Now, you can also draw a box around a node. You know, like if you know, if I can't click it and it's not clicking or whatever, I can draw a box around the node I want to select. But you got to be mindful that If you draw a box, it's going to select all the nodes that was within that box, right? So I'd have to hold the shift key and turn that one off if I'm wanting to move this one around, right? You know, but I can draw a box around that node to select it. If I want to select it, or if I want to select this one here, I can draw a box around it. So if I can't click on it, you know, I can always draw a box around it to select it. But sometimes you just got to zoom in, man. Just got to get in there. And, you know, the sensitivity of your mouse and all that stuff kind of plays a little bit of a role too, and everything. But, you know, it just depends on, you know, what it is that you're needing to do. Okay, let's see here. Now, Lone Marku asked about exporting a 3D model. Now, in order to export a 3D model, you have to have a spire. In order to export a 3D model, you have to have a spire. And there's only two choices. Lone is there is STL or as a 3D clip art. So if you're exporting it to be used in a spire, your Aspire program, you're exporting it just for someone to use in Aspire, then you can export it out as 3D clip art. But if you're exporting it out to sell, you created this model, you're exporting it out to sell, then it's going to be an STL. Okay? And if you're building a model to export out, you want to build in the highest quality possible. So when you come in and create a new file, hold that shift key down, create a new file, and in that, you want to either be extremely or maximum when you're building models. You want to build models in the highest quality resolution possible so people have really nice resolution when they're importing them in. And if you're importing models, let's say I'm in Desktop Pro or Aspire and I'm importing models and I'm creating a job that I know I'm going to be importing models in, I want to at least at a minimum be at the very high 7 times slower, right? That means 7 times slower to generate the preview. I want to at least be very high resolution, so I'm working with at least 4 million pixels at a minimum so that, I don't get a lot of pixelation in my models. But I may, come in and, use the extremely. I very rarely would, on importing a model, I very rarely go to maximum. That's only if I'm creating a model in Aspire. But I might use the extremely high quality when working with a model. But here's the kicker. Everything has its drawbacks and all that. You cannot improve the resolution on an existing model. So if someone created a low poly are the little triangulations, the poly count, the triangulations that create the model mesh, if you will, the surface, if it's a low quality model, you cannot increase the resolution of it by just increasing it here in the software. Okay. You want a high resolution to work with, so you're working with a high resolution to the best of its ability. But if that resolution of the model is lower than what you're working in your 3D view, then it's going to get imported at that low resolution. It's not going to mysteriously change. It doesn't change it. But because the resolution affects the quality of the finished cut, I want to do my best to eliminate as much pixelation in models that I can. So I'm going to work in that 7 times slower by default on an everyday basis, or I'm working in this extremely high option depending on the model, because I don't want any possibility of pixelation in my model, because that pixelation will translate over to the quality of the finished cut. So if I'm working with a model in my standard view, let me bring a model in standard view. Even my clip art models here. We'll even bring this deer in. Go to the 3D view. Okay. All right. This pixelation that you see here, can y'all see that? Let me see if I can zoom in more. You see this pixelation here? That will translate over to the quality of the finished cut. Okay. So we want to at least at a minimum be at a very high resolution, so that when we are working with models and everything in that, you know, very high resolution, that we're creating less pixelation, right? And a little bit better detail. Now, come in here again, delete this again, come back into, close this, hold down my shift key, create a new file, come in here and change this to the extremely high resolution, and bring this in. Wait for it. I'm not going to be able to, if the model is low resolution, I'm not going to be able to improve it any more than the model's you know, ability to improve. And by working with the extremely high, I'm getting much better detail around the nose and the mouth, less pixelation and everything, the eye and the ears and all, less triangulation and stuff like that. But I'm not going to magically be able to increase that model's resolution and make it, you know, if it's junk, I'm not going to be able to make it better. If I have rough edges, I'm not going to be able to make the edges smoother, you know, and things like that. Most models, their base meat right here is always going to look rough. Okay, that base meat on the model here is always going to look rough around the edges and everything. When we are, and you know, that's just on the model. The only way, if I try to smooth this out, if I come in here and I try to smooth the model out, stand by. Oop. Trying to tilt so we can see the base meat there. If I try to smooth this model out to clean up those edges and smooth them, it's not changing. All it's doing is it's smoothing out, and I'm losing detail in the shape here. The base height, it's not affecting at all. It's all I'm doing is I'm smoothing the shape, right? So you know, I've still got rough edges, and now I've smoothed this out as much as possible, and I've lost all the detail, right? So the models are, the edges, you know, the base are going to be what they are and everything. Now you can try to, you know, when you profile cut that, you know, do a slight offset, you know, so it cuts a little bit of the clean line, but you're not, there's really no ways to kind of get around it. It is what it is. It's how the models are and stuff. If it's really rough around the edges because they just didn't care when they, you know, as far as the edge detail when they were creating the model to begin with, then you kind of got to work with it and deal with it, right? But no matter, I don't care, I could be in the highest maximum resolution, it's not changing that any at all, right? You know, the edge is the edge. If I try to smooth it, it's just smoothing out the shape, not the, you know, not my base meat and all that stuff. So these are things that we have to contend with, and we have to just kind of, you know, deal with and everything. But our struggles are mostly, how do I import the model how do I combine this with the trees and the roosters and the log cabin and stuff to make it look like a scenery and all? That add, subtract, merge, that tilt and that fade. Again, those three things, your combine mode and your import, getting those kind of, worked on and nailed in, you're going to be good to go. As far as, model resolution and stuff, personally, every project, whether I'm working with a model or not, I always set my job set up to the very high, 7 times slower, that 4 million pixels. That way it becomes muscle memory to always use that no matter what. That way I don't forget to at least change it to that when I'm working with a model. If I'm importing a model that I bought, I do want to, I do hope that the guy created, or the girl or the artist created it with the highest resolution, possible. Give me a really good model. So I'm going to probably increase my job setup, knowing that I'm working with that model, that I'll be importing that model in. I'm probably going to hold that shift key down when I create my job setup, and I'm going to set it to that 20 times slower, that extremely high resolution, which is 8 million pixels, double the 4 million pixels, and at least I have that 8 million pixels that I can import that model in and, give it a nice chance of being a really nice clean model and stuff, right? If I bring a good model in to a low resolution, then all I'm doing is adding a little bit of pixelation to it and, kind of screwing it up, right? So I want to, if I know I bought a model and I don't know what the quality of the model is yet, but I'm gonna hope it's the best, right, or good quality. So I'm gonna make my job setup resolution higher to give me a fighting chance of having a really good model with minimal pixelation, right? Okay, let's go back. Hopefully I answered your question on node editing. You just got to zoom in, right, on that. Now, STL or on exporting models, like I said, you can only export in Aspire, and it's only as a STL file, or 3D clip art if it's going to be used in another Aspire program, which you can't guarantee that, right? Somebody in Desktop or Pro might be using it if it's a model that you're selling on your store or whatever. So you're exporting it as an STL. To make the best possible model, to build that model in a nice high resolution for them, use that extremely high or that maximum high resolution when you're building that model. Even if you're building it for yourself for carving, if you're building a model from scratch and you have Aspire and you're building a model from scratch, like a flag or this or that or whatever it is, use those two extremely high or maximum height to build a dang nice model with very little pixelation, so you have a nice quality cutting piece, right? So that's on that. Let's see here. Give me just a second. All right. I wish I could hold on. Let me see if I can. Pronounce. Give me just a second here. Okay, Galina Yuvakina. I'll just say Galina. So what on your comment and everything? What am I swearing or vowing to? Vumingo, to swear or vow. What am I swear or vowing to? Let me know. You can write it in I believe that's Russian. You can write it in Russian. I can translate it. All right, let's see here. Yes, when I am working in the software, I can't see the chat. I will come back and look at the chat. Let's see here. Thank you, Mark, for that. I appreciate you. Can you explain in Create Shape how the custom option works? I tried making an oval dish with a 45-degree bevel, flat edge, then the scoop for the dish. Not sure how it reads the vector lines for the shape. Okay, that's good. So let's get rid of this, and let's create an ellipse here. All right, and let's go into the Create Shape tool. Now, if you're wanting, there are two ways to go on this and everything. We have our custom is what you're referring to, because you do have the, if you want the bevel edges, you have the concave, which you could use in a separate vector, so you can create those bevel edges, but you have this custom here. Now with the custom vector, and I'm going to open up the manual to this just to read the exact wording that they place on this. But if we scroll down, to have they not? All right. So the custom shape profile uses a vector to define the profile rather than using one of the standard profiles above, right? We know that already. That's common sense, right? To use the custom profile option in the selection of closed vectors, so that's important. That's an important term, closed vectors. To use the custom profile option, a selection of closed vectors plus an additional open vector representing the profile have to be selected. It's just like your molding toolpath. So I need to create I've got my oval here. I need to create my profile of the bevel edge that I want. So let's say, for example, that let's go into the drawing here, and I'll use a rectangle to help me start off this. Let's say, let's go into node editing. Let's delete this point right here. Delete. All right, so that's gonna let that represent my bevel. But I'm also gonna insert a point here, and let's hit the letter Y to bring that down. And this here, I'm going to get rid of this, delete this span, and I'm going to get rid of this span here, delete that span there, and I'm going to create an arc, let's say something like that, right? Bear with me on this one, and this will make sense in just a minute. Now I'm going to make sure that's all one vector, and then I'm going to size it appropriately. So let's go into the size tool, and I'll go a 1/2 inch for right now. Okay. Now, in order to use the custom shape, I need to have first I need to select my oval, and then I need to follow that up, hold the shift key, and select the profile. So this and then this. Okay. Now I'm either adding or subtracting, multiplying or dividing. In this case, I'll add. It'll be an add, and I'll just go no limit, and I'll click apply, and it will wrap that shape in that model. And we'll go into the 3D view here in just a second. And it's wrapping that bevel straight across and then down into that oval, right? I got that long bevel. Now I'm going to shorten the bevel up a little bit. I've got this all stretched out real wide, right? So that's why it's kind of narrow, because that bevel, then it comes straight, and then it comes into this little concave here. I'm going to, let's shorten this up a bit. I'm going to go into node editing on this. Let's cut this down to here. Let's delete that. Let's take this shape. cut it back here. Delete that. Go back in here, select that and this. Go back into that custom shape again. Okay, let's go to the 3D view. All right, so it's essentially taking that shape that I've created, bevel, straight across, and then that little cup, and it's wrapping that shape around that oval. Let's do it on a circle so you can kind of see more of a dish look. Let's hold down our shift key and on this oval here, and let's kind of widen that up a bit, bring that in a little. Okay, let's go into the size tool and let's make this 7 by 7. There we go, nice and round. And let's do that again on that custom shape here. Here, apply. You can kind of see it a little bit better here, right? So this, what it's doing is my shape right here, it's taking, I don't care how big on the profile it is, it's not kind of like the molding tool. My shape right here is 7 inches by, hold on a second. Let me, not 7 inches, that's the circle. My shape here is only 0.14 inches tall, right? About an 1/8 inch tall. And it's only 5/8 of an inch wide overall. But it's taking this general shape and my 7-inch circle and it's creating that. So from the center of my circle, this part here, it's only making that dish a certain round. The flat part, it's making that flat part a certain length. The bevel, it's making that a certain length. So it overall, it stretches it out to cover that whole circle. So when we look at it in the 3D view, I end up with this little circle, because let's split the view and let's zoom into this profile here. So my circle's small here, so it's, you know, just coming around in here. This is wide, so this is wide here, and this is kind of long, it's coming out here long. So it's expanding this up to wrap around that 7-inch circle. It's basically sizing it up automatically. So that's almost like me, if this is a 7-inch circle, that's 3.5 inches wide. It's basically like me doing this with the profile size. Keep that aspect ratio and go 3.5. Click apply. Taking that shape right there and wrapping it around. Let's put this in the center, right? Taking that shape right there and wrapping it around that circle, right? So my profile is going to get stretched out to meet the size of my path, my vector, okay? And I'm wrapping it around. And basically what they did is they gave you in Vcarve Pro and stuff, no, I'm sorry, in Aspire, they put this tool, this custom tool here for people to create, you know, profiles and stuff like that. And it's essentially the same thing as this spinning tool. This spinning tool here goes, creates a shape from the center all the way around based on the profile. So it wraps this all the way around, and that's exactly what it's doing here as well, right? So the question for you is, okay, how, now that I know that it takes whatever my path size is, it's going to take my profile. You need a profile, and it's going to basically size the profile to the radius of my shape, right? Half of the shape, and it's going to wrap it around, you know, that. It's going to, you know, I've got to create my profile accordingly. What if my shape wasn't circular? What if my shape was rectangular? Okay. And I have my path here and I have my profile here, and I come in and create that custom profile. It's going to basically take that profile as half of my shape and just kind of wrap it around those four corners. So I'll end up with a kind of a mitered frame with a flat top with that circle in the middle of it, which you'll see here in just a moment, right? So my pyramid, my flat spot, and then that, you know, that dish. Even though these dishes are four sides, 1, 2, 3, 4, because it wrapped it around it, they're still curved, concaved, based on my curve of my profile, right? That's not a straight path down, that's a curve down, but it's curved down in those four sides. It's basically taken that shape and wrapped it around, you know, 360 degrees. That's what the custom does. Okay, so Tom, knowing that now, will that help you with being able to create the shape that you need for that custom shape? Basically, you have to have a path and a profile shape to follow. And remember, the profile shape, no matter what size it is, it's basically going to take it from the center to the end and wrap it around that shape, whatever it may be. Okay? So that might not be the option that you want, right? Now, if I go back to Tom's original thing about an oval with a bevel and all that stuff, right? Here's how I would draw that, right? So I would come in with my ellipse. Let's say that this is my ellipse here. Okay. I would come in with a offset inward. Let's go, I'm going to go 0.5 inches inward. And then I'm going to go offset 1/4 of an inch inward, like that. Okay. And now I'm going to go into the Create Shape tool. And my first shape is going to be a dome or a dish. And I'll go 30 degrees, subtract, and click Apply. Okay, that's going to be my overall dish there. Start a new component. This shape here is going to be a flat shape. It's going to have a height of let me see, 0.3 inches. And it's going to be a merge, merging it with the oval. And it's just going to, sorry, it's just going to be this right here. It's not going to be a merge, it's going to be an add. Sorry, combine mode. I think it's going to be an add. Hold on, I'll tell you in 2 seconds. Okay. Let's stick that one down there. Okay. right. Bear with me, working on the next piece. Let me give this bottom base a little bit of base height so I can see what it is. Base height, base height. I'll give it an 1/8 of an inch of base height, 0.125. There we go. Okay. And now I need this piece to bevel up to this piece. Okay. And basically, I pretty much can use my angular. I'll go 30 degrees. Limit to height. Limit that to 0.3. And merge that one in. That one will get merged in. And click apply. Okay. Now, my 0.3 brought that bevel right up to the flat area here. And now I need my dish. Let me come in here and bring my dish back up to the top on the combine mode, because I need that dish to dish out in there. And actually, the middle component here, I can get rid of that. Delete that. I don't need the middle. Oh, did I just delete the wrong component? I did. Hold on a second. Let me undo that. I just deleted the wrong component. This one I don't need. I can delete that. So what I should end up with is a 30-degree bevel with a little lip at the top with a nice dish. Can you see that? Can you guys see that? Right? I don't know if, you know, that's what you're trying to do. We didn't actually need that vector there. But 30-degree bevel coming up and then flattening off. That's in this shape height. That is the limit to height. So it comes up and I limit it to a height. So in this case, I've limited it to 0.3. So at 0.3, that bevel comes up, and at 0.3, it flattens off. So now I've got a flat top. And if that model wasn't, if that dish wasn't in there, then this would be a flat top all the way across, right? Just a bevel with a flat top all the, or a board with a bevel all the way around it. Now I'm putting in a dish, a 30-degree dish in the middle of that to dish that out, right? So that's how I would create that versus trying to use the custom tool. Yeah. All right, and let's see here. Let's go back up. And we all wish that we could afford every project in the Vectric store, right? Okay, gotta go record a podcast. Mark, have a great night. Let's see here. Can you tilt only a section of the model, or is the entire model always being tilted? So with a model, when you tilt it, it's sticking a wedge under that model, okay? Where you tilt it could vary. So let's see here. Mark, let me know if, or not Mark, but Tom, let me know if this helped you out any and everything. But let's get rid of that. All right, now, if I have a model in here, okay, and I am, let me flip that back over. and I am tilting this model. Let me kind of, we don't need to be in the 2D view for this. I have two anchor spots that I'm clicking on for that wedge. Okay, like I said, the first place I click is the lower part of the wedge. The second place I click is going to be the fatter part of the wedge. And when I, offer that tilt and everything, in this case, I kind of clicked right in the center of its body for that low part of that wedge. And what that ended up doing is it ended up shoving, it kind of created a teeter-totter, okay? By putting that wedge closer to the tail and all, it kind of created a teeter-totter to where it lifted this end up and pushed that end down. We don't want that. So technically with the wedge, we're basically tilting the entire model to get that that tilt. We don't want to teeter-totter, where this gets buried into the material, because if I do it in, let's say right here and right here, then I'm shoving, by lifting this end up, I'm shoving this end down. So effectively it's the whole model. Now in Aspire, I have the ability to split a model in half, and I could tilt one side of it, not the other, and then kind of blend it back together, if you will, merge it back together. But I can't see a reason for that. But and not everybody can do that. Only Aspire can. What it would require me to do, first of all, let me turn the tilt off on this, is let's say that I have in the 2D view, let's say I draw a line right here, and I select the model, I select the line, and I split that model in half. Okay, I have side A and side B, right? Just like a magician, I can saw it together, and then I can saw it in half, and then I can put it back together, right? All right, so now if I'm tilting this model here, let's go into the 3D view, and if I am tilting this model, I'm effectively raising, let's go a little bit more extreme. I'm raising his butt out a little bit, but I've got the model cut here, and so it's not affecting the rest of this model, right? Once I do that, then I can, once I tilt that up, if that's what I'm, wanting to do, I can then come back in and bake this model back together as one piece. And then I can go into the sculpting tool, and I could effectively kind of a little bit too strong there. Let's go into smooth. Blend that back together. And now his butt end is tilted, right? So that's an Aspire thing, that I can split the model like that. If I needed to tilt for whatever reason one part of it and not the other, I could do that, right? And so and I just undid what I just did on the trimming and all that stuff, because I'm about to delete this one. delete. All right, now let's go back over here. Brooke says, Laney, can you import a low quality model into a max resolution job and through sculpting and then export as a higher quality resolution model? No. Again, I cannot take a model, a low quality model, and import it into a high resolution project and magically change it into a high resolution model. I cannot change its properties in any way whatsoever. Its mesh or its polygons or anything. I can't even go into sculpting and and sculpt on it and stuff. I can do that, but when I'm sculpting, I'm going to be sculpting on that low quality. So it's depending on what I'm doing. If I'm smoothing, it's really going to be bringing out that triangulation, that low poly even more. It's going to make it worse, with the sculpting and everything. And when I export it out, it's going to export out as whatever quality it was. I can't. There's no taking a low poly and turning it into a high poly model. You have to build it from scratch to do that. Let's see here. Did you know that if you zoom in as close as you can get and you are still having problems, you can click on the zoom button at the top and then highlight the box around the junction you're having a problem with? Yeah. So what Troy is saying is that, if you've zoomed in as far as you can go, with your scroll bar or what have you and everything, you can come in and zoom in even more to a selected area, right? You can only go so far with your natural zoom, the kind of the pan and zoom. I'm using the roller wheel on my mouse to bring that line in, and you can only go so far, right? With that method. And then from there, if I need to zoom in more, I could select a window to zoom in more to that selection, right? So yeah, it's a good tip, Troy. Thanks, man. Let's see here. Let's see here. Hey, Crystal, good evening. How are you doing? Let's see here. Hi, CNC Masters and fans and crews. Suicide at all times. All right, Chris Knorr, can you carve a 2.5D art project in Vcarve desktop? Sure. You can basically, all right, so this bottle is a three-dimensional item. You and I as human beings are three-dimensional items. We are 360 degrees around, okay? A 2.5D model is a three-dimensional model, okay, that has shapes and everything, but it's flat, okay? It doesn't have any extents that wrap it around 360 degrees, It's a flat model. So that's considered 2.5D. A three-dimensional model that's flat. It doesn't wrap around 360 degrees. Okay, so that's 2.5D. You can absolutely carve a 2.5D project in Desktop, Pro, or Aspire. Okay, most all your models, every model, that deer and trees and all that, those are all 2.5D models. All right, if I was carving something on my fourth axis, my rotary axis, where I'm carving 360 degrees around, or I was doing a two-sided project like a chess piece where I'm carving 360 degrees around, where it creates the, both top and bottom to create that 3D model, that three-dimensional model, 360 degrees around, then that's a 3D model. But in the CAD/CAM world, 2.5D is a three-dimensional model that is flat. It doesn't have any extents that wrap it around 360 degrees, right? So every model, every bit of clip art that I brought in tonight, the heart, the deer, the trees, and all that, when they're carving, that's a 2.5D model, right? And you can absolutely carve that in Desktop, Pro, or Aspire. And let's see here. Oh, well. Now what's insane, guys, Keaton Holmes, that VorNGO comment, that's spam. I thought y'all were real. Okay. All right, let's see here. Could also, suicide at all times, could also do a 2-rail sweep. Suicide at all times could also do a 2-rail sweep. Tell me what that topic was referring to on the 2-rail sweep. Are you referring to that bevel, concave, and oval that we were doing earlier? Is that what you're referring to? Can we do a 2-rail sweep with that? Because we could. Yeah, we could. Let's see here. Let's see here. He thinks, yeah, that way I had shapes. All right, so it looks like I've covered all the questions. If I missed your question, let me know that I missed your question, and I'll scroll back up. And let me know. Suicide at all times. Anyone have issues opening old files in newer versions? I've never had issues with opening old files. You know, like 9.5 files open in 11 and stuff like that. I've never had issues with it. Somebody else may have. If anybody has, let Suicide at all times know. All right, so wrapping this up, we're going to wrap this up here then. All the questions are done. So one more time, we're going to import from scratch a 3-dimensional third-party model. Okay, 3D third-party model, 2.5D, whatever you want to call it. We're going to import a 3D model that's not Vectric native. It's not a V3M. It's not a V3 clip. It's not a Vectric 3D model. It's an STL. It's an OBJ. It's something we purchased online. So we're going to come over here and we're going to import a component or 3D model. That model, I won't do the heart this time. We'll come back. Let's go into, I've got other models here. Let's see. Let's go here and import this world clock. So the first thing that's got to happen when we import a model is it's gonna read that model and it's going to bring us into our orientation window. So I'm just doing a quick recap on importing a 3D model because this is where a lot of people struggle. So give it a second. It's a big model file. You can see that blue line racing across the bottom of the screen. It's going to take us into our orientation window. Okay. Now, once it does, which it will, give it a second. Be patient. Come on, world clock. Trying to do a wrap up here. Some models fight. Give it a second. It's orientating the model. It's trying to read it. Da, 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 da. I have faith in you. Come on now. We all want to go to bed. It's a high resolution model, so it's a big model file, so give it a second. It's coming. Come on now. It comes in so big. Let's see here. We might have to... Oh, man, come on. All right. Let's there it is. Okay. I'm just impatient, right? When we got class. Okay, so let's go ahead and I'm going to leave this at its current size here. The orientation is correct. Let's go into center the model. All right, that file is just going to be too big to work with for this class because it'll take forever with my computer acting up. Come on. All right. Okay, I'm not going to play with it anymore. All right. We're going to work with a different model. That one's a big one, and it just, for my computer processing power right now, is not up to par. So let me create a different file. And let me go back. Use this 7 times slower, the very high resolution. In our modeling, we're going to import a model. I'm not going to import the world clock this time. That one's going to take forever, so I'll come back and find another one. Let's see here. Those are I love yous. That is okay. We'll use this one. Don't you love live when things go wrong? And all right, so these I'm gonna have to remove a lot of those comments. All right, so this model is a perfect example. This model comes in upside down. Okay, so it is essentially kind of needs to be rotated, or it needs to be, turned. And so for this, I'm going to create, it's going to be a bottom model. There we go. So that it's facing the proper direction. And if I go into my Z view, like I'm looking straight down on my material, my Z view, this is the view I'm looking at, right? So I need to be, it's got to be a front view for me. So if we look at the Z view, sorry, a back view, not a front view, back view. And I'll tell you what that means, what front, back, left, and right mean in just a moment. But if we are in the Z view over here in the top right corner, if we're in the Z view, that means we're looking at our board square on, right? And so on this model, okay, when the model was imported, by default, it imports in as a top view, okay? And so this is not the top view, right? This is what the artist when they were creating it in their planes, in their three-dimensional space that they created in their program, they built it on the wrong axis, basically. And so if I take this model and I flip, so I'm looking at the model, my wrist here is me looking at the model. This to me would be the front, right? So if I'm looking at a front view, in normal aspect, you know, this would be kind of the front to me. Top would be here, all right? And then back, front, left, right, that kind of thing. So right now, they're considering this the top view. If I went to the bottom view, then I would be looking at the head, so it's going to turn it around. That's the head and the hat right here. It's hard to tell, but that's what it is. If I look at it in a back or a front view, then it's going to flip it upside down, right? Because it had the, you know, the feet, you know, front view, right? It flips it up. And so that's backwards for me. So in this case, it needs to be a back view orientation. I need it flipping around like this. This is what I want it to look like. My board's laying flat right over here. That square red box in the, let me move over to it. Okay, this is my board. It's in the Z view. I'm looking from the top down, right? I want this model to lay on that board just like this. So now I need to come over and size the model. So I'll size it down to fit within my project, which is my project is 14 by 14. And then I will center that model. Again, by centering the model, if I go into the Y view now, the Y view up here in the top right corner, I have essentially put that model right in the middle of my zero plane, like it was a two-sided project. This is a one-sided project. So when I go to position and import the model, I need to slide this slide bar all the way to the bottom. And in this case, I do, because the bottom of the model has to be above that black line, the zero plane. And then I can click import. When I do that, it will import that model appropriately. From here, once the model's in, if I'm not combining it with anything, if I'm making it part of a project or whatever, I can now size the model to whatever size up or down that I want to make it. Put it, you know, wherever I'm going to put it in the project, add my text, whatever it is that I'm doing. And then I'm going to come over, and the first thing I'm going to do is in my material setup, I'm going to make sure that the model is at the top of the material, not at the bottom, not in the middle, buried in the middle or anything, in the top. And anytime I change that model and whatsoever, that changes this model position in the material. So I need to come back and check to make sure I'm still at the top. That by moving, by sizing, by changing this model and all, I have not buried it into my material. Otherwise, it's going to carve deeper than it's supposed to, right? So in this case, I'm going to size this model down. I'm going to center it to the material, and right over here, the material setup, I'm going to slide that box up to the top, click OK. Now I can create my 3D rough cut. In this case, I'm going to use the material as the boundary, so it mills all this wood away and leaves that raised up. Material is the boundary, 1/4 inch end mill. I'm going to calculate this. Z level raster, I highly recommend and encourage a Z level raster over a 3D raster all day long. 3D raster, sometimes that end mill could get a little bit too close for comfort and remove material that our ball nose bit was supposed to finish. The Z level raster is just going to create those stair steps, kind of just remove that waste material, leaving plenty of material for my finish cut to do. My finish cut is going to use a tapered ball nose bit, preferably one that's small enough to get into the detail areas. So in this case, for me, I would probably be my 16th inch tapered ball nose. And again, using the material as the boundary, I'm going to calculate that. Now, I'm going to optimize this toolpath, and this is the last thing I'm going to say, and then we're gone for the night. Right now, my 1/16 of an inch bit is using the entire material as the boundary, meaning that it's carving all that material away as well as the model, you know, but all the material away. It's taking off that additional 40 thousandths of an inch material I had left between the rough cut and the finish cut. It's taking all that off, and it's doing, you know, the whole board, right? That small bit. And if we look at the process time, you can see my yellow bar is just crawling across there, right? Because there's a lot of stuff to remove. Okay? I'm actually going to stop that. I don't want to do that. I want my ball nose bit just to focus on my 3D area, but I still have material here that has to be removed. Okay? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into my model area and I'm going to create a boundary, a vector boundary around my model. I'm also going to create a boundary, around my material. Now, since I'm using the material as the boundary, all that's getting milled away, I do not have clamps in this area. I'm either two-sided taping it or, you know, hot gluing it or whatever, but there's no clamps here because the whole surface is getting milled away. So I actually want my bit to go past the surface a little on this pocket cut. So I'm actually going to take that rectangle and I'm going to offset it outward about a 1/16 of an inch. And I'm going to delete the original one. And I went the wrong direction. Let's try that again. Outward. That way it clears out. When I do the pocket cut, I'm going to run a pocket cut here. Let's close this. I'm going to do a pocket cut. But how deep do I cut my pocket? Well, how deep is my model? So let's go to the material setup again and let's look. Our model is 0.7148. 0.74148. That's how deep it is. That's my magic number. So my pocket cut is going to be 0.7148. I'm going to use a 1/4 inch end mill. I'll use a combination of a 1/4 and an 1/8. Don't really need to, but why not? We'll reduce the time some. Let's see here. Where's my end mills? They're eluding me right here. And I'll also throw in an 1/8 inch end mill in the mix. All right. Now, when I calculate this, what this is going to do is this is going to do all that work. Okay, it's going to be taking that material down to its next level. That way, my finish cut, my finished 3D cut, I can use the selected vector as my boundary, just this vector here around the model. So it just focuses on the model. But I do want to blend that model in with this flat area here. So I will let it offset past the model by about 1/8 of an inch, the diameter, twice the diameter of my bit. So when I calculate this, and it will be a positive number, unlike profiles and pocket cuts, those are negative numbers. and stuff when we want to go over the line. And I'm sorry, I got to change two things. I want to raster cut the pocket, and I want to raster cut the 3D finish. I don't want to do an offset. I always cut with the grain. So now what that's done for me is, if I reset this preview and turn off all these vectors here, my rough cut with my 1/4 inch end mill is removing all the material. Okay. Up to around the model and all, but it's leaving 40 thousandths of an inch of material. Okay. It's leaving 40 thousandths of an inch of material. Now, my pocket cut is basically removing the rest of that 40 thousandths of an inch. And let me stop that. I'm going to actually turn on the animation for this one. So my rough cut is removing all that material from around the model. Now I could limit the rough cut to the model as well and just do the whole pocket cut, you know, to 0.78 inches deep. Either way. Now, that rough cut has taken me down in my depth here. It says 0.625, right? So my pocket cut can actually start there. 0.625. Okay. And it can finish at 0.7148. So I'm going to actually subtract 0.625 from that. So all I need to go is another 0.0898 inches. So I can calculate that toolpath. And that pocket cut is going to remove that little rest of that material. That's what the 3D finish would ended up doing. Now my finish cut is just going to focus on the model, but it's allowed to go past the model by 1/8 of an inch so that it blends that model in with that flat area and everything. And so I've reduced my time significantly on that 3D finish cut because that small little 1/16 of an inch ball bit stepping over 8% the diameter of itself, doing that whole board would take hours and hours and hours. Allowing it to just do the model area and let the pocket finish off the rest, I've cut my time down dramatically, optimizing that toolpath. I hope that last little bit wasn't too confusing. Basically, we did a pocket to remove that 40 thousandths of an inch material, because if we look, the rough cut is leaving 40 thousandths of an inch of material here, so that the finish cut has some material to remove. But I don't want the finish cut, that little bit, having to do all this flat work, so we let a pocket do it instead. The 3D finish cut is just going to focus around the 3D model. And that's going to cut the time down, you know, to about 1 hour and 6 minutes for that 3D finish cut versus, you know, the 4 or 5 hours it would have been. Right? Overall, this project, based on my speeds and feeds of my machine, is a 5-hour job. If I would have eliminated the pocket cut and let the 3D finish cut do the material as the boundary, no offset, calculate. We'll let that calculate while I answer a couple more of y'all's questions, and then we'll come back and look at the time. So 5 hours, 45 minutes with doing the pocket cut and optimizing the toolpath versus we'll see what it is with the 1/16 of an inch. Oh, sorry, that was the wrong bit. Let me go back in here. Where's my tapered ball nose? Yep. Okay, let me calculate that. Okay, well that calculates. Let me see if we all have any of the last minute questions, and then we're literally saying goodbye after this. So if you do have any questions, now's the time to ask. Let's see here. Sylvia, your question was the mist at the top. So let me go back and find Sylvia Klosterman's question, and we'll answer that one first. Let's see here. Sylvia, the first question I saw for you was about the rough edges. Let's see, I see you waving at me. And then, question, is it possible to fix rough edges on a 3D model you import? No, we answered that question. Let me go back and see where the next question is. Thanks, Laney. I got that. That's Sylvia. Message retracted. You had a message retracted, so I'm not sure what it was. Let's go back down. All right, I missed Big Daddy Fishes. I'll come back and answer that one about the wildlife scene as well. But let's go back up to, let me find Sylvia first. You good on my end? Another Sylvia comment. Thumbs up from Sylvia. Hold on, I'm looking for the question still, Sylvia, that you say I missed. Let me find it. Peace sign from Sylvia. And now I'm at the bottom of the comment. So Sylvia, rewrite your question because I did not find it anywhere. I literally just went through the whole chat. But I did see one from Tom about a wildlife scene, Big Daddy Fish. I have a wildlife scene, deer mantle assembly number 1, and want to set it to an oval recessed dish. I'm planning on putting it on a piece of live edge oak in the oval. Okay. You guys are killing me. I swear you're killing me. That was more of a statement than a question. I have a wildlife scene, deer mantle assembly number 1. I want to set it in an oval recessed dish. I'm planning on putting it in a piece of live oak that is oval. Okay. So, I'm assuming that you're asking how to do that. So, let's cancel this. Come back over here. You've got a wildlife scene, deer mantle, assembly number 1. Right, assembly number 1, which is this thing. Okay, and you're wanting to first of all, let's size it down. Okay, all right, first things first is let's create an oval. Let's say that this is my board, right? We're just going to assume that's my board. Then I'm going to size this model up the best I can to fit within that board, or I might probably take out some of the trees. But I could try to stretch it. It'll make things look a little odd, right? Not keeping the aspect ratio and all. Matter of fact, let me do that. Let's undo this. Let's undo this, undo this. Okay, let's size this up let's get this centered on the material. Let's size it up. All right, that's the aspect ratio of this thing. All right. Let's create my oval. Now, first thing I'm going to do is not try to stretch this thing out to fit my oval, because it's just going to look like ass, taking it out of its aspect ratio. I do want in the oval, I might fill in some of this area with some, text or texture or whatever, but this is going to be a clipping issue. So we go into modeling, we go into our level, we select the level that assembly is on, and we select a vector, and we come down here and we clip and apply that clipping. So what that does is it removes everything outside of that oval away. So it only keeps what's inside that oval. Now here in the 2D view, you still see that model, right? But in the 3D view, it's cut that model off and removed that material outside of that oval. So it's only going to be this part here. Now, if you're doing it in a recessed dish, okay, now in Vcarve or Aspire, I can create a dish. If you have Aspire, great, create a dish. If not, you have to use your clip art dishes. So if I come in here to domes and dishes, I'll have to, I'll use a 30-degree dish, drag and drop it in here. I'm going to do my best to size that dome and dish to my oval. And let me just do it this way. My oval is 13.2 by 6.6. So 13.2 by 6.6. Let me center that in the material. Let me go into the properties, because right now it's a dome. So if we look at this, it's a dome. Need to make it a dish. And it needs to be at the bottom of the assembly. And the assembly number 1 needs to be added, not merged. Add mode, not merged. So it follows that flow. Okay, so it follows that that curve and all of that dish. And the clipping of the oval, I don't need that, so I'm going to create a new level, insert a new level. I'm going to put that assembly in that level 2. I'm going to take the level 1 and turn off the clipping on that, because I don't want my dish to be clipped. Oops. Level 1, clipping, remove. And level 2, I do want to add that clipping. Apply. All right. And let's throw in a 0 plane just for good measure. On the, bear with me a second. Okay. And so let me click off that. Now, this tree right here and this tree right here, currently right now, that is because the dish and everything and the size of the model altogether, that tree and everything is sitting high in that oval. And that's why it's sticking up above like that. Even though I clip to that oval, my dish starts there, and that tree, that model, it's thicker up at that top. My oval is thin, you know, coming up from that top. It starts from flush from the top and it comes down to its arc. My model doesn't. My model's got some thickness to it, you know, with its arcing and everything. So I either need to trim below that oval. I need to take this and offset. Let's go offset inward. I'm going to go a 1/2 inch. Let me see where. Let me look and see what's sticking up. How much of those trees is sticking up? So pretty much the whole tree. So I need to go a little bit more than a 1/2 inch. Let's go 5/8. Okay. Probably good there. And then I need to apply the clipping on level 2 to this, right? So I need to select that, go into my clipping, and I need to update it to this vector. Okay, so that way in here, let me see if it updated. It did not. All right, one more time. Come in here, clipping, remove. Clipping, apply. Better. All right, and I could bring it down into the dish that way, you know, but got to keep in mind my model's thick, right? So it's not going to be blended perfectly into here, you know. There's going to be a little bit of a lip there. Nothing I can do about that. You know, I could sand that flush and all that stuff, but my model's got thickness, and I'm trying to take this flat model that's got some substance to it and sink it down into a dish. So I've got to contend with, you know, that as it is. You know, I could take my sandpaper and I could smooth that out to where it blends. It's almost like fading that model, right? I could fade that model outward and all to make that disappear a little bit with sanding, right? Sanding, can't get away from sanding. All right, let's go back to this 3D view real quick. And I wanted to show you the time on this 3D finish that when we did not do the pocket. If I did just the rough in the pocket, right, with my 16th inch ball nose and everything, and I come in here, we're at 21 hours, right? 21 hours. But coming in and doing the pocket cut, letting that pocket cut remove that material, and then my finish cut just focusing on there and bringing it down to 5 hours. So I'm taking, what, 17 hours off of the carve, you know, by optimizing it, by doing the pocket cut. Because if I let the ball nose bit just do the whole thing, right, the material, all the materials, the surface, I'm looking just on the 3D cut alone, I'm looking at a 17-hour, 27-minute carve, right? Well, if I let the pocket cut, my end mill, kind of do all that flat work and stuff, and then let my 3D cut focus on the 3D model, then that 3D model is an hour long. Not 17 hours long, it's an hour long, right? My pocket cut, removing that material and everything, is 35 minutes for the 1/4 inch end mill, 23 minutes for the 1/8 inch end mill, right, to remove that pocket. My rough cut all, however, is, you know, 3 hours and 40 minutes. Well, let's optimize it one more quick time. Let's take that 3D cut and also take the 3D cut and also use the selected vector as the boundary for just the 3D cut. And on the pocket cut, let's just go from 0. And let's add that 0.625 back into that 7148, you know, our pocket depth, with the pocket cut. Just let the pocket cut do all the pocketing. Right? Now, by doing that, I bring this to its 7 hours. So I've added another, just because the pocket and everything, I've added another hour and a half to it. And it's probably because of the finish cut here, the 1/8 inch bit. That's an hour and a half there, instead of the 23 minutes that it was. So let's go back in here and take the 1/8 inch bit out of the equation. Don't need it. Calculate that. And my time is 5 hours, 18 minutes, right? So about the same time, but my 3D cut is just focusing on the 3D model area now. So if we look at this in the preview, let's uncheck these. My pocket cut is removing all that material away down to its full depth of what the 3D model's cutting to. Okay. My 3D rough cut, let that finish up. There we go. My 3D rough cut is coming in, and now it's just focusing on removing the excess material from the 3D model. And then my 3D finish cut is doing the rest of the 3D model, and it's blending it into that pocket. Right? So, and you know, 5 hours versus 21 hours. Right? So optimize your toolpath the best you can. You know, think about what's actually happening. We're doing a 3D cut, but only on the 3D model. This is all flat area here. So why not create the vectors that I need and do a flat area cut like a pocket cut to remove all that material? How much material do I remove? Well, how tall is my model? My model is 0.7148 inches tall, from the very tip top to the very bottom of the flat area. So that's how much material I would remove with my flat cutting toolpath, my pocket cutting toolpath, right? Instead of having that ball nose bit, that little bitty ball nose bit, do all that work, optimize your cuts. Okay, enough of that stuff. Let's, and hopefully on that scenery, that answered your question, Big Daddy Fish. I'm not sure what the question was, bud. But that's how I would approach it. Clipping. All right, let's see if Sylvia, did you come back, Sylvia, and write your question again? Where are you at, Sylvia? Okay, Sylvia must have left. All right. Well, let's see here. Did you ever respond to the cutting graphite for molds? Yes, I did respond to that right in the beginning. I have no idea about cutting graphite for molds at all. You would have to ask someone else in the group that question. I have no experience with graphite. Can you carve anything your machine is capable of carving? Can you carve anything your machine is capable of carving? Yes. Can I physically carve anything that my machine is physically capable of carving? That answers its own question. Yes. Come on, Suicide at All Times. You had to know that you asked that question. It's the same question. If your machine's capable of carving it, then you can carve it, right? If it's capable of doing it, then you can do it. How you do it, or figuring out how to do it, or what's the proper tool pass, the diameter of the bit that you use, the pass depth, the feed rate, all that stuff you got to figure out, but you're still able to carve it. If your machine can carve it, you can carve it. Cool. All right. You guys kill me. All right, let's see here. Does the water-cooled spindle come with mounting brackets for the 2440? Yes, it does. Comes with the water tank, water pump, the brackets, because it requires 2 brackets, and the water-cooled spindle and hoses. Yep. All right, guys and girls, we're cutting it out of here. It's 2 hours and 45 minutes for class tonight. Hopefully you got anything out of everything we discussed tonight. Hopefully if you've worked with models or just starting to work with models, you now understand a little bit about how to import them in, whether it's a model that comes with the software that I'm just dragging and dropping, or it's a third-party model file that I'm importing and positioning, orientating and positioning. Hopefully you got a little bit better understanding about that. Hopefully you have a little bit better understanding of how models combine with each other. Add, we're draping that sheet over that car. Subtract, we're taking that shape away from that car. Merge, we're merging it in with the car, right? We're merging it in. So hopefully you get that and get something from tonight. Hopefully you picked up something, right? Until next time, I will see you soon. Thanks, everybody.